You guys all set? Great. Mark? Mark, you guys all set?
Thank you.
All set, Tyler? Good evening. I'd like to call the Lisbon Town Council meeting for June 2nd to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And the first item, please.
Is roll call. Counselor Garrison?
Present.
Counselor Lunt?
Here.
Counselor McTevier?
Here.
Counselor Bickford?
Here.
Counselor Pesky?
Here.
Counselor Crafts?
Here.
And Counselor Brunel?
Here. Before we move on to the next item, I'd like to just briefly inform the public that we did make an amendment to the agenda this morning. We added item 2015-152A, Treasurer's Disbursement Warrants Council Designation. We did that this morning. And the first item, please.
Is good news and recognition?
I believe Tracy does have somebody to address the council.
Hi everyone, I'm Trevor Kenkel, president of Springworks Farm. We're right down the road here doing aquaponics, which is a combination of fishing plants and a recirculating system, which will allow us to gain efficiency in our farming and provide greens year-round to the area. You know, we're really excited to get started. We're going to have our first crop in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be opening the farm stand, which we're working with Rick Bellinger to do so on June 10th. And, you know, we're really excited to get involved in the Lisbon community, and you all have been very helpful in getting us started. So thank you guys.
I appreciate you coming in to address the council tonight. It's exciting news. If I remember correctly, you guys are having an open cutting your ribbon very shortly.
Yep, June 10th.
June 10th. Is the public invited to attend that?
Absolutely.
At what time will that be at?
It'll be at 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. Perfect. Thank you. Council, have any questions? Thank you very much for coming in, and let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah. Council Bickford.
Yes. On May 11th, there was a meeting in Augusta with Representative Crafts, Senator Mason. I missed this one. And Jonathan Labonte, Mayor of Auburn. And it was Pan Am, people that own a railroad bed from the Big Dipper to Lewiston. They made the meeting, they came in with their lawyer and head man and sat down, and for the first time since I've been trying on this, they said they wanted to help us out. So they have leased to the state of Maine the railroad bed for no charge from the Big Dipper to the Lewiston line. So that means once they get through the DOC, which is Department of Conservation, whatever, it's a new name now, the DOT will be taking the rails up, the ties up, and the only stipulation that Pan Am had was that the bed be maintained at their specifications. They're not giving it to us. They're making us an offer so we can use it at no charge to them. And this will be a multi-purpose trail starting, I'm going to say, basically at the old Night Solitex plant and go all the way to, it will be to the Gridiron, or the parking ride will be for motorized vehicles and whatever. And then it goes to, what's that restaurant up there? I can't. Da Vinci's for a walking path and bike path from the parking ride. So that should be a good economic boom for the town as far as recreation. I've seen this in Ellsworth and up north, and it brings in a lot of people. So it's something that we've been working on for a few years, and thanks to Jonathan Labonte and Dale Kraft, Garrett Mason, and the governor, because he was on board with it too. We should have quite a project going at no cost basically to the town, except for the town will have to do the maintenance and, well, the town won't. The clubs, snowmobile clubs, ATV clubs, and equestrian groups, they will maintain the trail once it's done. So
Perfect.
you'll have quite a walking path.
Thank you very much, Roger. It's, I know you've put a lot of work into it ever since I got on the council. You've been working on it, and I'm glad to see that it's finally coming up, and you put a lot of hard effort into it. Does anybody else have anything for good news and recognition? I briefly just have a couple of things. Wanted to congratulate the class of 2015 on their graduation. It was a nice graduation to attend at the Lewiston Armory. I also wanted to congratulate them. They received $1,718,514 in scholarships. At scholarship night, unfortunately, I was working. I was not able to attend that. But it's great news, and it's great to see Lisbon kids receiving that much money in scholarships. The other thing I just wanted to briefly mention was I was able to attend the adult education graduation last night. There were 11 graduates come through the adult education this year. Five of them were there for the graduation. The others had other obligations or something, so they couldn't be there. But it was nice to see people have a second chance at education. They valued it, and they were very excited for this milestone in their life, so it was great to see. So my congratulations to them. Anything else from council? Seeing nothing? Next side, actually,
I have something.
Go ahead, Diane.
Good news, and I want to congratulate Twyla. She has been appointed as president of the Clerks Association.
Add another duty on to Twyla's long list of things to do every day.
Small job.
Thank you for representing Lisbon well. We all received a very nice email from the Clerks Association about you, as they really think highly of you, and it's great to see. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next item, please.
Is the public hearing. It's a moratorium ordinance prohibiting marijuana dispensary facilities.
I'd open the public hearing for the marijuana dispensary moratorium. Yes, ma'am.
I'll let you announce who you are since I'm secondary.
Okay. I'm Chris Cornish. My husband and I own Drapos Costumes at 20 Main Street, Lisbon Falls. We have been trying to sell our building for almost 2 years now because we have been so lucky as to inherit some land from my husband's family. And we're going to move the building, the business, to already owned and land that we're already paying taxes on, basically. So we have tried several different avenues to sell the building. And then we were approached by someone who has a very niche market. What this gentleman does is he finds buildings for growing operations. And one thing that is a problem in a lot of what's been said on the paperwork is dispensaries. This is not a dispensary situation because there are no more licenses for dispensaries. But my husband's done a whole pile of work here so that he can give you some information, give you some paperwork, so you can really look at this issue because it could bring in jobs, tax money, it's clean, et cetera, et cetera. But again, my husband's the one who's done most of the work. But his name is Jim, and he's going to fill you in.
Thank you.
Basically, this is just a listing for every one of the counselors and so on. If you want to take it, I don't ask you to take a look at it right now. And this is all the pertinent information and background information that I pulled up. I'm going to be real brief in what I'm going to say and so on. Basically, it comes down to there are two types of facilities that are in the process of growing medicinal marijuana. You have caregivers and you have dispensaries. Dispensaries, you cannot have any more licenses in the state of Maine for dispensaries. Caregivers are basically, the best way for me to describe it, to make an analogy, is they are basically milkmen. They create something in a spot and then it is distributed outside that location. Caregiver operations are located in Durham, Brunswick, Lewiston, Auburn, Gorham, Biddeford, Hiram, let's see, Naples, Saco, Portland, Westbrook. You only have 8 different dispensaries, which is not something we're talking about, or I should say the realtor's talking about being involved in. One's in Auburn, Eagle Lake, Biddeford, Ellsworth, Thomaston, Gardner, Portland, and Brewer. To be a caregiver, and I know what probably a lot of people are going to sit back and say, and I would have said before I actually got involved in looking at this, was you're going to have a bunch of people smoking pot outside the building. But I was amazed at how much licensing is required on this. First off, they need a food preparation license. So they can't, whatever has to be done in food, they have to do the same thing. There are no pesticides. They need a MEVA license. They need a caregiver's license from the state. All background checks are done on all the caregivers and employees. They're open to federal, state, and local inspections at any point in time. The building itself must have a security system, and there can be no more than 2 caregivers and 2 employees per location. So you don't have a lot of people involved. You don't have a lot of keys being transferred and so on. All transactions at the caregiver's location are internal. These things are, the process is that the material is gathered, it is put into a double locked location, and then at that point in time, what ends up happening is they are ticketed. Each municipal medicine is ticketed, and it is driven from that location to the patient's location. So again, similar to what the old milkman used to be like. He's dropping off his milk, they're dropping off medicine. The other nice thing about it is it's quiet. As the other individual was talking about as far as the farm was concerned, this is a farming. If you took the word marijuana out of this and put hydroponic tomatoes into it, that's what this is. They're doing it all inside. The reason they like large buildings like ours is that, one, ours is a security system. It has 2 vaults in it, because it used to be an old bank, right? They like heavy situations because it is a light manufacturing, yet they do a lot of different work with a number of different things, and they like the heavy buildings. They're not easy to get into, and so on. We also have, some places don't, but we have 3-phase. They require 3-phase power. There's no pesticides. This is all organic, so you aren't going to have pesticides being spewed everywhere. According to the state, it's produced over 100 jobs in dispensaries. And again, I want to just qualify, this is not a dispensary, but in the dispensaries, 100 jobs. It's produced over 1,330 jobs as caregivers in the state. Over $1 million in revenues from the dispensaries, over $3.6 million from the caregivers. And that includes sales tax, equipment tax, growing, and so on. Just to even become a patient, the state charges a person $300 to become a patient. So it's very regulated and organized. According to the realtor I spoke with, he said that he came in, he took a look at our operation. He said that basically he would have to have, or whoever ended up buying the building would have to do between $100,000 and $150,000 worth of renovations in the building. And I thought to myself, God, that's a lot of money. And he said, not for these people. The investment is substantial, so it's not a fly-by-night situation. And our building is about 11,000 square feet. Those renovations include redoing all the locks on the vaults and the doors. They'll have, if I remember, everything's going to have bars on it and everything.
Bars on the back windows, which we already have. Front door and front windows will have to be fortified.
Includes full-blown security system, and also each room has to be climate controlled. So there's a lot of electronics and everything. And so again, it's not something that, they just come in and they start growing. As I said before, every plant in there is tagged and inventoried by the caregivers. The material that is prepared is in a double lock situation. And again, you only have a maximum of 2 caregivers and 2 employees involved in it. All the medicine is packed with state labels and labeled to whom it's going to go to and from who it came from. And then everything has to have a trip ticket, which means that when that goes into the vehicle itself to be transported, it needs a specialized ticket to be transported, similar to what you might do if, well, you tag a deer or a turkey or something like that, you need that on there. The way I look at it, some of the advantages of the town of Lisbon are, you know, you got a few more employees and employers. There's a lot of, for $150,000, that's a lot of work for the electricians, plumbers, contractors, and the renovations. They're gonna use substantially more water, more electricity. I think probably obviously talking much higher tax revenues for you people, and it's a clean, quiet operation. You don't hear about these organizations being broken into because of all the things that they have to go through to begin them. They don't want the riffraff around because that means they lose their licenses. So our building fits well for within what they're talking about. And again, as I said, it's not going to be a building that you can go through the process of putting a moratorium on the situation relative to dispensary, because a dispensary is different under the categories than a caregiver. So you can say, I don't want to have someone walking in and purchasing pot in the town of Lisbon, because what ends up happening with a caregiver situation, it is a farming operation that is delivering materials to someone else. So all the information's there. If there's any questions, I will try to answer them as best I can and go from there.
Appreciate you taking the time to do all the research and providing the council with some information. I don't know if the council will have some discussion later on the agenda when we get to that item, and might have some dialogue then. And if the council has questions for you, I'll entertain for you to come back to the podium.
Good enough.
Thank you very much for your time. Is there anybody else regarding the medical marijuana dispensary moratorium? Seeing none. Next item, please.
Is audience participation and response for agenda items?
Open the floor for any audience participation for agenda items. Mr. Fillmore.
Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. I see on the agenda that we're going to prepare an RFP for paving. And before we stop paving any place in the town of Lisbon, we need to pave whatever you want to call it, because I don't think it has a name. The street in front of Public Works. Everybody goes to the transfer station. That is heavily trafficked, okay? And if you went up there today, it was terrible because they put dirt, gravel down. It rained, washed it all out. So it was terrible today. So I see a list that you have on here. It didn't mean you, but I mean that's before the council. Before you consider any of that, please consider paving that street. Now, I understand it's not a street, okay? And here's part of the issue. It's not a street. It's not a road. Some people think it's an extension of Sug Drive, but they don't know that to be true because it isn't listed anywhere. So everybody just forgets it. But we can't forget it because everybody in this town uses the transfer station. And they go up that road all day long when it's open. Okay? So we need to take that into consideration when you go out for an RFP for paving. Like I say, I don't know what the name of it is. That you guys going to have to figure out. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Does anybody else like to address the council?
Not to rain on your parade, but we've got a,
Just first thing, could you state your name and address for the record, please?
my name's Carl Pinkham. I live in Lisbon, 11 Sabattis Creek Drive.
Thank you.
I don't know if you need to know that much, but whatever.
All set.
There's a huge drug problem in our town. I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but I'm realizing that you're cutting, you know, some of the police force hours and stuff like that. You need to really look at that. I can honestly say that when I come home from work, from the minute I get home to the minute I go to bed, there's more traffic in my trailer park than, and I've followed them. They're coming from the hotels, they're coming off the highways, and they're
Just a
going.
second, is your comment regarding the medical marijuana moratorium?
No, it's just drugs and.
All right, so that will need to go at the end of the agenda for the second audience participation portion. This is for agenda items only.
Oh, okay. I
Yep.
thought it was my turn to speak. Okay.
No, at the end
All
of the
right.
agenda. We'll open it up again.
Let me know when.
All right. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close audience participation.
Wait,
Is there one more? Oh,
The article on the flea market,
Because
It
that's
sure
on
is.
the agenda.
okay.
thank you, Eric, for pointing them out to me.
I wasn't sure when I was supposed to come out.
That's all right.
Here's an updated list, one for each year.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Carville, owner of Riverside Flea Market. I've got some notes here, as well as a list of other flea market comparisons. The reason I'm here is because of a 300% increase in the permit licensing of my flea market. The history behind it is they started this back in 1996. And the reason they started it because of the dispute between shrimpers at the Sabattis Bridge. They were arguing about whose space it was and everything. So they came up with this itinerant license. In doing so, they added Riverside Flea Market for really no good reason that I can tell, other than to get some revenue. I've checked with other towns, and as the attached list shows, they don't have fees associated with outdoor flea markets. They do have some for indoors. And so I checked on this and why there was an increase. And from near as I can tell, it was the other members back in July, and they increased it. And I asked why, and they said each department gave a figure. Well, from near as I can tell, I don't know what they would have to do for Riverside Flea Market and outside flea market. As far as the fire department or code enforcement, it's been the same for 30 years. So I don't know why the yearly fee. Other flea markets, they charge a one-time startup fee, if anything. Understand if it was an indoor flea market, they might have the fire inspector to check access, fire extinguishers, lighting. I don't have any of that. I've checked also with one of the other towns, and they mentioned that the mass gathering, which is what they've got me under, itinerant mass gathering, the state has a mass gathering, which I give the item, and they refer to attendance of 2,000 people in a 12-hour period. I don't have that. And so it's kind of out of sequence here as far as where they've got me located under mass gathering. Maybe I should have a band there or something to qualify for it, but right now I don't. Most towns do have a mass gathering permit. Checking with them, they don't charge for mass gathering permits. Most of the time it's for parades, things like that. Also, in the article, we mentioned at the last meeting that the council could not adjust the fee. Well, at the bottom of it, section 10-259, it refers that the town council has the right to change the fee. I guess I'm requesting that this
mass gathering permit remain at the present fee or no fee as like the other flea markets, which you can see on the attached list. And I tried to give you not only the information, but as far as telephone numbers, the person I talked to. So if they want to check some of this, you're more than welcome to. And some of the towns do have fees, but they don't have any flea markets. So I've tried to list which flea markets are paying fees and how much, which are, for outdoors, there's only one other one. And I've given the comparison. The closest flea market to Lisbon is Brunswick. But again, it's an indoor flea market, and it's 3 times the size of Riverside. And they pay less than what I would be paying. Again, therefore, I request an adjustment on this fee.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Council will have more discussion later on this evening regarding the fee schedule. Does anybody else like to address the council? Make yourself known. I don't want to skip you. See none? Mr. Fillmore addressed the paving in front of Public Works. You are right, that is a bad situation. Ryan will be in later tonight. You're not the only one that's mentioned something to me about that, so I'm sure we'll get something clarified there. And then Mr. Carville, you mentioned the increase in the fee. The increase in the fee for the mass gathering permit was last year the council was fighting over $40,000. And we were fighting over that $40,000 for the budget. And the council directed the staff to go back and find more revenue. And when interim town manager Dale Olmsted worked with the staff, and every department presented their fees, and then the process they go through for issuing certain permits. And when they did so, they concluded that the increase in the fee was appropriate, and that's how the council made up that $40,000 in revenue that we were fighting over. Regarding the Section 10-259, you are right. The council does have the authority to change the fees, but that's after we go through a process to change the fee schedule. We can't just say, Mr. Carville, we're not going to charge you $400. We're going to charge you $100. We can't do that. It has to be a fee schedule process we go through, and we just went through that earlier this year. It can't be a case-by-case basis. And then the mass gathering permit, that we fall under language in the charter. The state does have their language, but a charter language can be more restrictive, and that's why you can see differences there. A charter just can't be less restrictive than state statute. And I believe that covers it all there. I'd like to make a note before we move on to the consent agenda. I'd like to go to item number 8, Atlantic Salmon Federation Upper Dam Report B, and bring that to the front, as long as council doesn't have any objection to that. See none? We'll just have the clerk officially move us along, and then we'll get started. Next item, please.
Would be under other business, the Atlantic Salmon Federation Upper Dam Report.
Thank you, Chairman Pesky, and distinguished members of the committee of the Town Council. My name is John Burrows from the Atlantic Salmon Federation in Brunswick. Here tonight to primarily go over the Upper Dam report that we commissioned and had Stantec from over in Topsum do. We presented that report to you back in January, and I know that it's been several months and you guys have been very busy, so I've asked Mike Chiminski, who is the primary author and researcher on that report, to attend tonight and to cover some of the more significant findings from that report and recommendations. Before I do that, I did want to update you folks on what's happening with the Mill Street Dam, because I know that was a topic of interest last time, and that was the main topic of interest when I was here back in the wintertime. Just a few points on that. First, we did receive the $100,000 grant that we were looking for, from which we got the letter of support from the town and from the water district. So thank you. The other fundraising for that effort is continuing to go well. Right now, we are trying to determine the final costs on the mercury remediation and mercury cleanup. I should actually have a cost figure on that later this week. I'd hoped to have it tonight, but it's not available yet. And also, a few weeks ago, we went out to bid on the replacement of the water main, so we could actually get accurate costs and what that will be. And we should have, hopefully, more than one bid on that and some prices next week. Once we have the mercury costs and the water main costs, it'll allow us to have a ballpark sense of the total cost for dealing with the dam, the mercury, and the water main. And from there, we can try to strike a deal with the owner of the dam site and work with the water department on securing the funds to do the replacement, et cetera. So things are moving. They're moving slower than I would have liked, but I'm hoping to be able to come back here in the next few months and hopefully have a package deal, and if all things go well, to present that removal and all that construction work for next summer. If there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, I can move on to the upper dam.
See anything from council? Anything? See none?
Okay, great. I'm going to turn it over in a second here to Mike, but I just wanted to remind folks kind of the history of the Salmon Federation's work at the upper dam. Now, we're working on all the dams on the Sabattis, from Sabattis Pond all the way down to Mill Street. And when we approached the town first, it was about 5 years ago at this point, we were talking with the town about constructing a fishway at the dam. We never thought that dam removal would be something that would even be considered because of the large impoundment there and everything else. And then kind of all of that changed a few years later, back when the dam breached just about 3 years ago in June of 2012. So the breach happened, the site was in a complete mess, and then in the summer of 2013, ASF went in and we spent about $22,000 cleaning up the site, taking care of the worst hazards of that middle wall, which was a complete nightmare, shoring up the shoreline, and just trying to make the site better than it was. From that point on, we decided to continue doing kind of the feasibility analysis work of the dam, but it became very clear that because of the breach and the costs involved with rebuilding that dam, and for no economic purpose, that would be something that would be highly unlikely that would happen. And so that's something that Mike will be covering in terms of the cost there, and also pointing out a few points regarding the stability of the structure that's there. And probably the most other pressing issue or largest issue of concern would be if the dam were to come out all the way, what would the additional changes to the water level be behind the impoundment? So I think those are the major things, and Mike can certainly cover, or I could cover any other points that come up. But at this point, I'll hand it over to Mike Chiminski.
Thank you very much. Before you get started, could you just, for the audience, clarify where the upper dam is? I don't believe everybody is familiar with that.
Yep. So the upper dam is basically when you're driving west on 196 heading towards Lisbon, you'll pass the Farwell Mill building on the right-hand side, go right past that, and then it's Webster Road on the right. And so you cross Webster Road over the river, and upper dam is on the left-hand side.
Hopefully that clarified it for anyone in the audience that was confused. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Good evening, Chairman Pesky.
Good evening.
Councilman, and the citizens of Lisbon. My name is Mike Chalminsky. I live in Durham, Maine. Work in Topsom. I'm a professional engineer, Maine license number 10320. As described by Mr. Burrows, I did a follow-up study titled Evaluation for Removal or Replacement of Upper Dam, Sabattis River, Maine. And following on that, I've looked at that dam and others on behalf of Atlantic Salmon Federation and others, and was privy to their initial efforts to put in a fish pass there prior to the events of June 2012, when the old mill race failed, dewatering the impoundment and leaving a bit of mess, which Mr. Burrows alluded to, was subsequently cleaned up in June 2013. The study that we're presenting some preliminary information on this evening followed on what are the alternatives to address the dam in its current state. So a few things we looked at is opportunities for reconstruction, opportunities to achieve some of their goals, such as fish passage at the site, and a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, and I've recently spoken on to the American Society of Civil Engineers main section, is dam removal as infrastructure management. So what we did at this site is looked at 4 alternatives at that dam, which is no action, do nothing. That's the current state of affairs. We looked at reconstruction of the dam, and we looked at 2 alternatives for removal of the dam. A primary motive for this was natural resource benefits in the way of fish passage in the river, and also reducing impacts associated with operation and maintenance of infrastructure. This town, in owning that dam, is familiar with some of the headaches associated with infrastructure. A final piece of information that's come to light since completion of that study is the governor commissioned the Maine hydropower study, which was completed this winter, and looked at potential opportunities in Maine to generate hydropower at existing dams that are not powered. I've worked on various dams in that study, including some for removal, some for repair and replacement. What's conspicuous is this dam is not even listed in there as a potential site for hydropower. And that's a very important part. This screening study, which was performed by Maine-based companies, was very thorough in looking at any sites that are out there, and this didn't even make that bill. So it's a question that also then comes up. Do we have a ready source of sustainable energy in front of us? In this case, it's very clear that we do not, even if the dam is reconstructed. So moving forward, we came up with a long-term cost for ownership of that dam of approximately $500,000. And you might ask, how did we get to that crazy number? Well, when it failed in 2012, it made a mess of the park just downstream on this side of the river, and folks had to go in and clean that up. Luckily, your neighbors with the Atlantic Salmon Federation came in and organized some work to take care of that. However, I'm sure many of you who saw that noticed the linoleum and whatnot that was in the stream banks out there. You're familiar with the issues at the Bonafide site in this town. There's a bit of our history in the soil here. And part of it is some of that history you don't want to encounter on a regular basis because it can entail cleanup costs. So that gets us into reconstruction of the dam. We're looking at about over $1 million to reconstruct that dam, and that's the modern standards. We're in 2015 now. Dam reconstruction, serious business. We don't want dam failure, so if you're going to do it, you do it right. We also looked at 2 dam removal scenarios. The first one, which is ironically alternative B here, is get rid of the rest of the spillway and get rid of the gatehouse on the north side of the river. Getting rid of that gatehouse would require cutting into the river. I live in Durham. I come up here. I fish. I like standing on that gatehouse, so I convinced John and his project partners at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to say, hey, let's leave that platform, put a railing on it, and have a place to look at the falls, because it's a great parking right there. It's just down the street from the VFW, I think it is. And why not leave a great public viewing platform? You can't get to a lot of the dams on the river. They're on private property. They have mill buildings next to them. This is a great spot in the middle of the town. So we looked at that. The 2 alternative scenarios for removal have costs on the order of $250,000. It's a lot less than reconstruction, and some opportunities that come with removal of that dam include putting some material against the retaining wall on this side of the river. For those of you who've seen it, that retaining wall is adjacent to the wall that was removed in 2013. The downstream segment of that wall is stone masonry, and she's deteriorated. You've got some stone in the river just downstream where the park was returned. That masonry is almost self-repairing, because if it falls in the river, it's big stuff. It's going to be there, but you might have some stuff behind it. The concrete wall upstream of that, adjacent to the dam, across the breach section, monolithic concrete wall appears to be cantilevered. We aren't sure, but there's a little bit less determinant on how it fails. If it does fail, it's probably just going to be a pancake job into the river, and then you're sitting there going, what do we do? So our removal scenarios did include, we'll pull that wall out, grade back the slope, and make it nice. Having been over there dozens of times, it's a nice lawn. The suggestion is maintain the integrity of the site by putting some big rock against there if you go in and remove the dam. That is the balance of the spillway, and you can just get the concrete out, or you can go pull the gatehouse out. This town's got a long history of development since we all came here. My theory is, let's leave some of that. Let's leave the integrity. Let's get a nice rapids in there. So you remove the dam. What happens out there? Well, when she breached, she lost about half the height of the impoundment. She came down 3-4 feet. Initially, it's a shock. It looks like low tide. By August of that summer, low tide was covered with long lawn. If you pull the dam out, although it's bedrock under there, we're looking at another drop of 2-3 feet of water in normal summer conditions out there that it's going to come down. Now, we've gone upstream, done bathymetric measurements for a mile upstream, and I was surprised. I thought, yeah, it's going to be about 3.5 feet deep, so it's going to be water this deep. What we found out there is pools 6, 7, 8 feet deep for a mile upstream. So what you'd have is a continuum of deeper pools with some riffles between them, but what was really conspicuous that we didn't see that's just going to be one wide riffle or, gosh, you know, a channel this wide and real shallow. There's going to be water up there. We know that. It certainly comes down from Spadis Lake, has to go to the Androscoggin into Merrymeeting Bay. So there is something there. High flows. So another concern is, can we mitigate flooding? Well, the loss of the dam has dropped some of the upstream waters for the 100-year flood, which is what FEMA uses to regulate our flood maps a small bit. If you get rid of the dam, you can drop it about 3 feet further, and a mile upstream, you're reducing the water level by another about 2 feet. So there's some potentially tangible benefits associated with removal of the balance of that dam to reducing floodwaters that far up. Another piece, I've talked to Maine Department of Transportation about some of the potential issues with 196 right along the river up there. And some of you may be familiar with all the fun Durham and Maine DOT are having with 136 over along the Androscoggin. That's more fun than they've ever paid for. We aren't saying there's going to be a failure here, but we're cognizant of that. And so I've talked to the head of hydraulics and drainage there about that, just to get Maine DOT's position on do they want to look at it, because we don't want, I live in Durham and I've dealt with that problem over there. So we've talked with them, and what we've agreed to, if this is pursued as dam removal, we'd like to get Maine DOT out there and just do a site walk, see if they have any concerns on that site. Is the geology similar to what they've got over on 136 in the Androscoggin River? So final piece is when that work was cleaned up in 2013, when they said, look, let's get that failed wall out of there, that masonry wall, at least let's get some water through there. We didn't know much about the site. You couldn't see much. And what we found is the clever folks who built that mill race paved the bottom with concrete where it wasn't bedrock. The idea was that we could get fish passage at the downstream dams and they'd zip right through there. Well, if you go out there, stand on the wall and look in, you see it's smooth concrete. So the water's zipping across there. If you doubt me, go out there most years in June or May when the alewife are in the river further downstream. They're not here yet. And try and wade across there. This year doesn't count. You get knocked over. It's smooth. It's like running water across this floor. So it's not fish passable for these smaller bodied fish like the alewife that we're looking up there. So there need to be an improvement. Typical improvements are rebuild the dam and put in a fish pass or hog out a bit more of the dam. I suggest that from the interest of cleaning up some infrastructure, that's like a 40-year-old pickup truck with a lot of rust, probably the best thing to do is get it out there, or buy the new diesel dually, spend a lot of money and get it out there. But I think something needs to be done from an infrastructure management perspective. And from what I've seen in numerous sites helping dam owners throughout New England, all across the U.S. and Canada, removing this infrastructure that's no longer used is a pretty good decision and a sound thing to do. You talk about the road that needs paving in town. Who wants to spend money on this dam, particularly if you can preserve some of the site and the integrity that you have there?
Thank you very much for all that information. It was a lot to take in. Does the council have any questions or comments? Only one mine's more of a comment. I would hate to see the water level of the river decrease. One of the biggest complaints that I got when the water level went down, my phone went crazy with people that have land that abut the river, is what's going to happen here. You know, what the looks of it when you're driving by, and at one point, my aunt and uncle owned a piece of property on it. I went there. They called me because it stunk, because the grass hadn't grown in yet, and you know. I would really hate to see the water level decrease 2 feet more. I'm afraid it eventually would go to a little path where you can only bring a canoe through, and it wouldn't be, you know, a nice view to look at. But that's my personal opinion that I would just like to share with you guys when you're going forward on the construction on what to do next. I think it's a valuable asset to Lisbon to have the river go through, especially in that area where we're going to be spending some some time there, and just decreasing that water level I don't see being that good of a benefit for us, but I just want to share that with you.
May I respond to that?
Yes, please.
Have you gotten any calls in the last year or so regarding the mud flats and the smell?
I haven't, nope.
So this is, I've worked on about 70, 80 dam removals in New England in various phases, and that is one of the two great concerns are the river will go away and the mud's going to be there forever. And what we found is the grass grows in the case of 2012, by August it was grassed. It is a change, there's no question about that for the community. The view shed changes, you will have a river, it won't go away. At times it's going to appear to be smaller, it's going to have the same amount of water coming through. And beyond that, I think it's just clearly a financial decision for the town on how you want to maintain it. There are potential opportunities to limit the amount of drop in the water out there. There's some things that can be done. You know, you can retain parts of it, but 2012 you got some calls. 2015 it doesn't sound like you're getting calls.
No.
You may have gotten some last year. So I think it really comes down to this idea of infrastructure management. You own this asset, and it comes up to the town and how you want to spend your money, and also some of the values you place on the existing resources versus what may be there in the future.
And when you guys come back in approximately a month to give up, you know, when you have all your ducks lined up, are you going to have a proposal that shows what different opportunities there are for action with the dam, or are you just going to have the one that you guys recommend to move forward with and what you want to work on?
In terms of upper dam or
Yeah,
for
the upper dam.
Well, for upper dam, it's really this is our report is kind of final at this point. It's kind of, this is the different cost alternatives, If the town wants to rebuild the dam, you're looking at in excess of $1 million plus hundreds of thousands of dollars in operating costs, because that will require having a fishway built. The other alternative really is, you could leave it as is, but the dam is going to continue to fail. That retaining wall could fail this year or in 5 years, and it looks like there's some nasty stuff behind it, and so that becomes a headache. The other alternative is really, moving ahead with further assessing dam removal and getting a decision. It doesn't have to happen this year, but if we're successful with Mill Street, the fish in the river that we're trying to get back in, runs of, 500,000 fish are going to be knocking at the door. So something will have to happen to improve fish passage in 3 to 5 year period.
Okay.
Beyond that, we're happy to help, and we could work with our federal funding partners and our private sources to do the dam removal to no cost to the town. Versus if you want to rebuild the dam, there's really no assistance to do that. So I think that's just stuff for all of you to consider and think about and what the options are. But we're going to be removing one of the dams up in Sabattis this summer if our permitting goes well. And our goal within 5 years is to have access all the way to Sabattis Pond. And so I think it becomes a question of what the town wants to do. Is it keep the dam as is and try to build a fishway and monkey around with that, or do something more dramatic, or just wait and see what happens? So I think it's really up to you guys to consider and contemplate and maybe get a sense from the public on. But we're happy to help with the removal scenario if that's something that the town wants to do.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
Council, have any other comments or questions?
I have a question. Has there been any engineering work done on the question of the erosion by 196 and the flea market area? I know there's a turn in the river there, and if you reduce the level of the river, you're going to have that water's going to be flowing faster through there. And I think the DOT has had some concerns about undermining 196. Has there been any work on actually engineering that?
Not engineering it, yet, but that is the point that Mike was making before, that if, right now, that situation should probably be looked at. But in terms of further removing or lowering the water level, that would be something on the to-do list that we would pay for Mike or another engineer to actually assess and work with the DOT to see, is it an issue, yes or no? And if it is an issue, here's what you do to fix it, whether it's rip-wrapping it or making it more solid so it doesn't become, it doesn't get washed out. So.
See nothing else. Thank you guys very
Thank
much
you.
for the update. And the next item, please.
Is the consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have any item removed may do so now. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered next. Seeing none, order 2015-135 to approve the attached sewer commitment and the minutes of May 5 and May 19.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you. And the next item, please.
Is under council orders, ordinances, and resolutions. Order 2015-136 to request to prepare an RFP for paving, road striping, library, brick repointing, and purchase of used 4x4 pickup truck.
Ryan?
Good evening.
Good evening.
We are trying to get ahead of the curve a little bit here. I know the budget hasn't been officially approved from a municipal standpoint, but we would like permission to go out to bid for some of these items that we want to get approved, so that way we can get on the schedule early after July 1. The paving being the first item. It did include a draft list of roads with a couple different alternatives that we'll be looking at receiving prices on. And then the typical center and edge line striping. The library brick repointing is the project that we've talked about and kind of budgeted piecemeal. And the plan with that one is to take town building funds that we have currently and overlap them, or have the funding from July overlap that and try to get that project done. But we don't have official bids on that. And then we just found out how much the insurance company was going to reimburse us for the truck that was involved in an accident back in March. And so we'd like to take those funds and try to find a used 4x4 pickup truck to replace that. happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions from council?
Can you address Mr. Fillmore's comment?
The section in front of Public Works
Right.
that we drive across every day, yes, so we tend to have that paved as soon as possible. Right now, our current budget doesn't appear to have the funds necessary based on some of the estimates that we received, and so the plan is to have it paved. If not at the end of the year, with whatever available funds we have, then it'll happen the beginning of the year as part of this paving program.
Is it, with that new hot box you got, is it possible to fix that some? I mean, doesn't
It'll
that
be
work a
graded
lot?
again, it'll be graded again tomorrow, the gravel, some of the estimates we received were in the $12,000 to $15,000 range to pave that portion.
That one section?
Yeah, so, I mean, the plan is to try to narrow up the scope of that and get it paved, but, I mean, we did what we did there because we were constantly filling potholes with hot top material from the hot box, in the spring, and it just wasn't staying, and this makes it a lot easier for us to maintain, and now that the rain's done, we'll grade it, and it'll be fine again until it rains again, until we can get it paved.
I got one more question on the truck. Are you gonna try for another state truck?
Actually, yes. There's a couple available right now at the auction on Thursday, actually, that are well below the price that we have here. So we were gonna check those out on Thursday at the auction and see, but obviously we needed permission ahead of
With
time.
that insurance money, you might be able to get two.
Not this time. They didn't have much for 4x4 3/4 ton pickups. They do have a couple Dodges right now, that are just under 10,000. So we'd be looking at, those are the ones that we intended to go look at.
Any other comments or questions from council?
The library brick repointing, is that one side of the library or all the sides, or what are you
That's
doing
hopefully
there?
all the sides.
Okay.
I mean, the plan is to put the whole building out. We'll see what we get for, because we originally had estimates for the 4 different faces. And in the past, we intended to pick, a face at a time or whatever. But the plan at this point is, we feel that we potentially have all the funding that we need, and we'd like to get the whole thing done and over with. And so, and we're hoping that we'll get some better pricing by doing the entire project all at once as well.
Anything else? All right. I'd open the floor for a motion for agenda item 2015-136.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
Or I'll give it to Councilor Lunt. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you, Ryan. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-137, the request for disposition of town-owned property.
Welcome back.
Yeah, as my memo states, we have 2 items that we'd like to get rid of sooner rather than later. One is the 2000 GMC 3500 truck that we replaced with the Ford F550 that we purchased a few months ago. We'd like to put it out for sealed bid, see what we get for bids, and at the same time evaluate what it is for scrap value or whatnot. And then we have the old J&J trash trailer that's been sitting outside. Was there, once we got the 2 new trash trailers, we hung on to that one just to make sure everything was going to work in case we had any problems. We haven't used it. It sat there. It needs to go. Scrap price isn't great right now. That's kind of the other reason we've been holding on to it. But I'd like to evaluate. I can't imagine anybody who's going to want to buy it, but at least put it out there. And if not, then we'd look at just taking it to Grimmel's and just scrapping it.
You gonna take a minimum bid, or?
On that, I don't know, Zoe. I don't know. I don't even know what I'd put for a
trailer.
minimum bid. I'll probably just weigh it and see what scrap value would be. The last one we scrapped, we got about $2,000 for. So
But I will tell you, I went to look at the truck because I wanted my own, and the truck could probably, I would like to see a minimum bid of $1,000
Yep.
for about a month.
yep, okay.
It would make a perfect farm truck for somebody because they, as you know, the stickers are different on a farm truck.
Yep.
And but after that, metal right now, iron is less than $100 a ton.
Right.
So it's not like it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
So, but as far as I'm concerned, I would like to see it out for about a month.
Okay.
And then do what you got to do with it.
Sounds fair.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
And your motion includes a $1,000 minimum bid for the truck for a month.
Yep.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-137, the Sewer Department mower.
As part of the sewer department budget, we did budget to replace a 1987 John Deere riding mower that we inherited from Public Works. We didn't come before the council to request permission to go out to bid because we didn't anticipate asking to spend more than $10,000. But because we're trading in the piece of equipment as well as the total cost for all the implements that we'd like to get, ended up totaling more than $10,000, then we're here to seek your permission. We originally, we sent out an RFP, which was in the packet, to all those vendors that were listed: Chad Little, Hammond Tractor, Trip Equipment, Union Farm Equipment, Wallingford's, Waterman's, Westcott and Sons, and Whittemore and Sons. And we did receive 4 bids, with Waterman Farm Machinery being the low bid for $11,950, which includes a loader for the front of the tractor. And this is a small, relatively small, compact, four-wheel drive riding lawnmower, just so people understand when I say tractor, as well as a bagger system for the lawnmower. And they were going to take the 87 John Deere that we have in trade, and I believe they're going to give us just under $4,000 for trade-in value on that. So with all things evened out, we're looking at $11,950. We currently have $18,938 in that account that we intended to use the funding for.
I'm happy that Wallingford's was the one that did it. It's a very close business.
Waterman's.
Waterman's.
Yeah, okay.
It's very close.
Yep.
and
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept the
Is there a
lowest
second?
bid.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
The only question that I had, I noticed that for the old tractor, you have a sweeper
Yeah.
attached. That's not needed for the new one? You guys are all set without it?
Right.
Because you have the big,
Well, we can use the one that Public Works has. We also have the walk-behind, the handheld ones. So we rarely use that one that we had anyway.
do you have a plan for the remainder of the money in that account?
Yep. Because we had planned to get a trailer to go with that, and we're actually looking at prices for a small dump trailer
Okay.
to use, that we could put the tractor in as well as use it for different work around the treatment plant sewer department.
Sounds good. This happens when you get stuff less than you expected.
Yep.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
7-0.
Thank you.
Order passed.
Thank you, Ryan. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-139, Beaver Park trailer expenditure.
Mark?
This request is basically some funds that are in a GL account in the park program to use to purchase a trailer. Apparently, we've been using Public Works trailer for the last few months, and it's about $2,000, and I'm not exactly sure how much it is. A little over $2,000 in that account to use for that trailer. It's an 18-foot trailer we're looking at to haul the mowers.
Do you already have I'm guessing you have the trailer picked out that you want?
No, we've looked at some. We're going to look at some used ones now and see if we can get a better deal.
Okay.
Well,
Diane, do you know what this wreath money has typically been used for in the past?
It's just different projects that she.
It's gone into
Yeah.
the regular account.
Right, it's, because of the way the budgeting was done in the prior
Yep.
years, she took the revenue from that and would put it into the expense account and spend it, but
Okay.
we're not gonna do that in the future. We're listing it as revenue in the new budget. So
For sure.
this is a carryover with funds.
Open the floor for a motion.
She planned on using the funds from this account to get the trailer.
I know that. I'll make the motion to accept spend the money on a trailer.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Good luck finding the best deal.
yeah, thank you.
All those in favor of the motion?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-140, the acceptance of utility poles for the purpose of hanging banners.
Tracy?
As you know, in the past, we've always been able to hang banners across Route 196. those poles were owned by Fairpoint. Because of insurance and the liability, Fairpoint said, we can no longer hang banners for festivals or events. However, we are willing to put in the poles and cable lines free of charge, and then have the town accept those and the maintenance and the responsibility of those poles. So what I have before you, that Fairpoint has done so. I wrote a letter to them as well, thanking them and recognizing the workers who helped with that project and coordinating it. So now we just need council to accept that the poles and the band, you know, the cable lines and everything as town property.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the polls.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
My other question, where are these poles located? Is it by School Street, where the banner used to be, or?
Actually, we worked it out, and I even worked with the superintendent. They're in front of the high school where the crosswalk is.
Okay.
So Ryan, as well as we had looked at DOT and within the right-of-way and make sure within the lines and there's no wires or anything like that. So they're in a safe place.
And what will the procedure be for a banner to be put up there? Will there be a form that has to be filled out? How's that going to work?
We can do it that way. I had actually developed something, and I brought it before council a while back, but we didn't really have much dialogue on that. Some communities charge a fee for the hanging of banners because it will be ours property, so Public Works would have to be responsible for hanging those up and taking them down, and then there would be the criteria as far as on size-wise, making sure that they have the cuts in them. And I do have a template that I have put together. If you'd like, I can bring that back before council. I wasn't sure if you wanted to do something within a fee structure and how you wanted to base that. So if you wanted to give some guidance on that, I can certainly bring something back to you.
Yeah, I definitely think that some sort of procedure is going to be needed for this, to cross our T's and dot our I's, and that brings back up the fee schedule, and hopefully I don't forget to bring this up when we get back to that item.
And how it would work is really, it would go through the clerk's office, and then they would be responsible. They would also have to provide a certificate of liability insurance and list the town of Lisbon as an additional insurer, and that would be required from anybody who would be wanting to put a banner up.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you very much. And the next item, please.
Ordinance 2015-141, a moratorium ordinance prohibiting marijuana dispensary facilities. This is the second reading, and a roll call vote is required.
In our packet, we have the moratorium here that we had our first reading at the May 19th council meeting at the Lisbon Community School. This will be a second reading to the moratorium. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make the motion.
And your motion is to approve the moratorium?
Yeah.
Is there a second? Anyone want to second this moratorium before discussion? I'll second it.
Now can we talk about it?
We can. Yep. I just wanted to get a motion on the floor first. Does council have any discussion we want to have on this moratorium?
Yeah, I want, this is new to at least me, so I want more information.
Do you have certain questions you have for him or anything?
How are you planning on doing this right off? Because this moratorium is like 180 days, so it's.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But the big disconnect here from what I can see, and again, I've read through most of what Jim gave to you.
Right.
The big disconnect is people saying, oh, it's a dispensary. The people are going to be buying stuff. It's like, no, it is not a retail operation. Change the word marijuana to tomatoes.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's heavily guarded tomatoes. You know, they need to have, because it is so highly regulated, they need very easily fortifiable buildings, basically. That building, some of you have been in, I know Greg's been in before, a few of you have been in that building. either with my business or prior. Heavy, thick walls. The back windows are already barred. There are 2 safes available. All they have to do is put in 2 vaults. One is holding about 10,000 yards of fabric right now. But they can have new doors put on there so that they can safeguard all of this product. It is pharmaceuticals. It's not Cheech and Chong out in the back smoking dope. It's not like that anymore. This has become a very big business, a very lucrative business for a lot of people. This is a large building. As I said, we've had it on the market for 2 years. No takers, no lookers, no nothing. And then we heard about this gentleman and his niche marketing. And we gave him a call at the urging of one of my husband's customers. And he came in and took a look, and he says, I got 3 people right now that would take this building because it's sturdy, it's fortifiable, it has 3-phase power. It has a security system already intact.
Sprinkler system.
And the sprinkler system. It has high ceilings. So it has a lot of what they already look for.
The key component to this is the idea that no matter how you look at it, whether you like it or not, marijuana has been legal in the state of Maine since 1999. I didn't know that until I started looking into this. You probably have a number of people in the town right now who are patients, who they may be going to Auburn to pick up this material. There may be, I know there are a couple of different caregivers over in the Durham area. They may be bringing stuff over here. So the concept of not wanting the drugs in the area, drugs are already here. And to the gentleman that was talking, I don't disagree with him, but this situation is these patients go to a physician, doctor, they get it's no different than what going to Hannaford to get your prescription, except the prescription is brought to you. And that's how this works. Again, I believe all the laws are in a packet there. I suggest you take a look at it. It borders on Fort Knox is what they're talking about, and the number of different things that can occur to these people. There's only so much that they can have at a time. They have specific disposal aspects. If you have too much pot in that place right at one point in time, marijuana, you have to dispose of it. At any point in time, the federal government, state government, local government can walk in. They have their own main DEA license. Everybody knows about it. The main reason you don't hear more about this is because they want to keep it quiet. No one wants to be known as the place that has the pot in it because there's a potential of people trying to break in. That's why you don't hear about caregivers. You only hear about the 8 dispensaries because you can go in as not as a license, but as a patient and acquire your medicinal marijuana from that location. So that's why you only hear about those things. The caregivers, as I said, according to the paperwork, it's approximately almost 1,400 caregivers in the state of Maine right at this point in time. And these are people who basically grow medicinal marijuana in a secured situation, and they can have 5 patients, and each patient can have 6 plants. And what ends up happening, those 6 plants are designated for that person. And that marijuana does not go to anybody else but that person. So it really breaks down to it's a pharmacy on a hydroponic end of it. And the way, again, the towns that have opened up to it, I talked to my customer about it. He sold 2 of his facilities to 2 people, one in Gorman, one in Portland, and he said they went in, they actually brought in 3-phase power, which is not a cheap thing to bring 3-phase power into a building. But there seems to be a lot of money in this. There are people who are looking, and this individual realtor, he has a niche, and as Chris said, you've got 3 different people that are looking to acquire buildings like that. Now, again,
and this is my suggestion, and take it for what it is, I know a little bit more than you know right at this point on it. But what it comes down to is, I know you've been trying to sell the mill over here. As Main Street, we've been on Main Street now for
9 years.
9 years, and it isn't pretty over there. I mean, you know, you got Frank, and then things start going downhill. You've lost a number of different organizations over there. They moved out, and so on. And I'm not saying that you should fill them all up with a caretaker thing, but all I'm suggesting is take a close look at what this could possibly do for a building like ours, because as this individual, I've talked to him 2 or 3 times, and so has Chris, as this individual said, you know, the type of buildings are in Lisbon's a Milltown. I grew up in Thompson. Lewiston, Auburn, Milltown. Those are the type of places that these guys are looking for, the heavy places. And if you can increase your tax revenues with a quiet, non-intrusive situation, and again, requiring 3-phase power, a lot of electricity, a lot of water, it's an industry now. I mean, however you want to look at it, whether you agree with it or not, it's here. So I guess what I'm saying is, we have an opportunity to move on to make our lives better by moving our business to another location. And again, we see this as an opportunity for us. I'm not going to say that it's not an opportunity for us, but I'm just saying for the town of Lisbon, it may be something to consider. And so that's really what it comes down to.
I've got something to say.
Hold on just a second. Roger, are all your questions, are you all set for right now?
Right now, I was just gonna say, is there any way that we can, have a workshop on this before we vote on it? Can we table it till for another meeting?
Let's-
Vote, or-
Yeah, I think there are several questions here. Well, thank you very much. If you have any other questions, I'll ask you to come back to the podium, but several people have questions here to raise. We'll go with Council Garrison first. You were the first one to indicate to me.
Well, from what he's describing me, he's already said it isn't a dispensary.
Mhm.
So to me, that has, what they brought really has,
No, you're all set.
it has nothing, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not a dispensary. This covers dispensaries.
Correct. You are correct.
To me, that's pretty much,
That's a point that I was actually going to raise is in here, this is a
this is
medical.
nice information.
This is a medical marijuana dispensary moratorium we're talking about. We're not talking about dispensary. I mean, we're not talking about a grow operation for this moratorium. This moratorium is only covering medical marijuana dispensaries.
giving out
So
licenses.
what am I, just bring it back, I'm going to bring it back to the council. If the council wanted to support to have a moratorium to ban something like that for a time being, we would have to make an amendment to this moratorium and go back to a first reading. So first, I want to get to everybody that has questions, and then we're going to need to come back and discuss if an amendment is needed or not, and we want to go from there. So now I'll go to Councilman Mativier.
So what you're saying, you think that this would bring business into town? After this gentleman had spoken earlier about the issue that, and I know Lisbon does have a large problem with drugs in it. And I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but these places that put this stuff out and they're selling this stuff as quote-unquote medical marijuana ends up in the hands of a lot of people that are not supposed to have it. And people that are caught with it, a lot of these people that are caught with this stuff, they come to find out it came from the quote-unquote medical marijuana. So the stuff is getting on the streets, and to be honest with you, I don't think we need it in Lisbon. I just think it's bad business for Lisbon, and I don't think it's gonna help our town. That's just my opinion, my take on it.
Okay. And now I'll go to Attorney Stockford. I was indicated you had a statement.
Yes, I just wanted to add that, as I understand it, the issue here is there's two, under the law, under Maine law, under the Maine medical marijuana statute, there's two types of entities, if you will, that can grow and dispense marijuana. One is a primary caregiver, and the other is a dispensary. And as I understand the issue, we're talking about primary caregivers, which under the law are allowed to grow for a defined, relatively small number of patients. A dispensary there's a limited number that are allowed under the statute, and a dispensary is authorized to dispense and grow and dispense to primary caregivers as well as directly to patients. So I don't believe that the moratorium would apply to the type of entity that we're talking about here.
Correct.
And if the council
Can you just pull
were-
your mic down actually for me to recognize?
if the council were looking at a change that would expand it to primary caregiver, because I understand we're at second reading, I think that would be a material amendment, and you need to go back to a first reading.
For sure, I completely agree with that. Any other comments or questions on the moratorium we have in front of us? All right.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend that and go back to the first reading, as Dan had just mentioned.
Okay. So your motion is to make an amendment to add primary caregivers to the moratorium?
Yes.
Is there a second to that amendment offered?
I can't help you with that one.
All right. I'll second that so we can have discussion. All right, so I'll second that. Twyla?
Yes, you need to vote on the amendment. After the amendment is
Correct.
disposed of, you can go to the main motion, either as amended or not.
Yep.
It would be
Right.
a roll call vote. Are you ready?
No, not just yet. I just want you to know that I was seconding that so we could have some discussion. Then we'll have a vote and go from there. So do you have anything you want to add to for discussion purposes to your amendment?
I just, like I already mentioned, I don't think it's good for the town of Lisbon. I think we're asking for trouble for bringing something like that into the town. I think we have enough drugs in the town. I think Chief Brooks would agree with me. He sees the stuff coming in all the time. And some of the arrests are with medical marijuana, the people that are not supposed to have it.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion to add primary caregivers to the moratorium? 3. And opposed?
Hang on. R-M-L-N-G-G. Okay.
All right.
3, 4, and amendment fails.
I will offer a second amendment to the moratorium
Another amendment, okay.
to go to section 10537, effective date and duration, and to change the moratorium period from 180 days to 90 days. I would offer that amendment, so it would put a little more pressure on the council to work with staff and to work with the planning board to come up with an ordinance if we want, or to determine an ordinance isn't needed, as this moratorium will ban it for a designated time period. And I'm not convinced that, I haven't decided either way where I'll support, but I would like to get the police chief involved and maybe the Lisbon Police Advisory Board to get a little more information. But in order for that to happen, I think we need to light the fire. So I'll offer an amendment to change section 10537 from shall remain in effect for a period of 180 days to 90 days.
I'll second that motion.
Will that
I'll make
require
that-
make this a first reading?
I believe, yes.
And you're also expanding it to include the primary care, is that correct? Or are you
Nope.
just leaving it as?
That's already
okay.
denied.
Okay.
Nope. All right, we have a motion. Council Bickford seconded that motion. Any discussion regarding this? Dan, do you agree it wouldn't?
Yeah, I don't believe that a change from 180 days to a shorter time period
really?
would be considered a material.
Oh, perfect. That's even better then.
Excellent.
That's awesome. All right, so all those in favor of my amendment?
I did just require the first reading, yes.
This would be a roll
Roll
call,
call.
vote, correct?
Even the amendment will be roll call?
Be roll call? If the ordinance itself is
Okay.
required.
We'll do roll call then.
Okay.
Go ahead with it.
Did we do a roll call for the other one?
We didn't. No.
At least I got that opposed. All right, Counselor Garrison,
Yes.
Counselor Mativier.
Yes.
Counselor Kraus. Counselor Pesky.
Yes.
Counselor Bickford.
Yes.
Counselor Brunel.
Yes.
And Counselor Lunt.
Yes.
We have 7 yeas and 0 nays. This amendment, number 2, passed. So the main motion as amended.
Yes.
To adopt the moratorium ordinance with the effective date of 90 days.
And we have a motion from Counselor Bickford, and I seconded that motion. Any other discussion on the main motion? Roll call vote, please.
Counselor Lunt.
Yes.
Counselor Brunel.
Yes.
Counselor Bickford.
Yes.
Counselor Pesky.
Yes.
Counselor Kraus.
Yes.
Counselor Mativier.
Yes.
And Counselor Garrison.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-142 to schedule a workshop for the ordinance prohibiting marijuana dispensary facilities.
This is a time, as Council Bickford had mentioned, to have more discussion. I completely agree, more discussion is needed, and I want to involve the police department in this process. Does the council have any certain dates in June or July you would like to meet to discuss this? Anything special, anyone? We have a council meeting on the 16th, but we're going to have a lengthy executive session to follow, so I would say we stay away from the 16th. The 23rd we have open, and I'm assuming we're going to have to come in on the 30th to have a special council meeting to adopt the municipal budget. So we could schedule one for the 30th if you guys want while we're already here. That works for everybody?
Works for me.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there, can you offer motion to,
I'll make a motion to have a workshop on the May 30th meeting.
June 30th?
June
June
30th.
30th.
All right.
Sorry.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-143, the Lisbon Cemetery Committee. First reading, roll call vote required.
Diane?
This is an addition to the administration ordinance to add Lisbon Cemetery Committee, and what this is the composition of the cemetery committee to go along with the next item, which is the cemetery ordinance. We've been working with Bob Packard on the ordinance, and both the cemetery ordinance and the addition to the administration ordinance has been reviewed by the town's attorney.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Ready for a roll call vote?
I had one question I wanted to ask, but I gotta find where that question is first. I guess I don't have a question. Roll call vote, please.
Counselor Pesky?
Yes.
Counselor McTevier?
Yes.
Counselor Brunel?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Kraus?
Yes.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Garrison?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-144, the Lisbon Cemetery Ordinance.
And this is a standard cemetery ordinance, and I believe that we captured everything that we need to in it. Obviously, this will be the first cemetery ordinance that we have on the books, and it would cover all the town cemeteries. And I wanted to include the list of our cemeteries, and I didn't do that, but I can get that to you at a later date. And this would be the superintendent would be under the direction, it was of the Parks Department, but now it's the Parks and Recreation Department.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
Only question or statement I wanted to make was, I think it's great that we're having an ordinance, we're going to have a committee, but one of the things that sometimes I think we lack is maintenance of the cemeteries. And I don't know if that, we need to figure out how much money we're going to spend there, but we need, my personal opinion is we need to spend some money and maintain those cemeteries for the deceased and to make it presentable, especially if the municipality is maintaining those and our name is attached to them. So I don't know how much we have in the budget prepared for that, but I think that should take a special look at that.
Okay.
All those in favor of the motion?
Let's do this by roll call, since
Want to
it's
do roll
an
call?
ordinance.
Okay.
So your motion is to adopt the ordinance. This will be the first reading. Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Brunel?
Yes.
Counselor McTevier?
Yes.
Counselor Pesky?
Yes.
Counselor Crafts?
Yes.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
And Counselor Garrison?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-145, an itinerant vendor ordinance. This will be a first reading. For roll call vote is required again.
Under section 10-253 on page 65, we added C, which says council may waive fees for charitable and nonprofit organizations registered with the Secretary of State and in compliance with the Internal Revenue Service Code, section 501.
Top of page 65.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
I think this is well. I think it's good. Covers everything we talked about last time, giving us the authority to waive instances like Positive Change Lisbon or any nonprofit that we deem necessary. I think this will work well. And any comments or questions from council? See none. Roll call vote, please.
Yes, to adopt the amendment presented. Counselor Garrison?
Yes.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Crafts?
Yes.
And Counselor Pesky?
Yes.
And Counselor McTevier?
Yes.
And Counselor Brunel?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-146, the fee schedule.
This is on the agenda on the request of Councilor Garrison from the May 19th council meeting. I don't know if, Councilor Garrison, you want to lead us on this charge or not?
Well, I actually have a change to that, so to speak, after the information provided. I noticed under one of the sections, under section 10-256 on the Code of Ordinances, it identifies mass gatherings or flea markets. So I'm wondering if the gentleman is required to have a mass gathering permit, because they're two separate entities under the ordinance later on. So I'm just wondering if this is even an issue. That would be my only question, is if they're separated, then are they two separate entities? Is the flea market considered a mass gathering? I couldn't find a definition for mass gathering anywhere, at least not so far. But I was looking up the one that he references in here, and then I noticed further on down that they separate carnivals, festivals, mass gatherings, flea markets. So to me, that means they're not the same thing.
Is that in our charter or the state?
It's in our charter, under our Code of Ordinance, 10-256.
So you're saying that you believe they don't qualify for mass gathering?
I don't think they're, from reading that, that would lead me to believe that they may not be required to have a mass gathering permit. In which case, if we're going to require a permit for flea markets, then we would have to go home and a whole different animal. Call a flea market a flea market.
Could we get an opinion on this from the town attorney? I don't know, maybe
I
some
don't
time
know.
to study it, but I'd like to go on that.
Yeah, this is the first I've looked at it, but it just, when it's identifying things in here, it
He
separates
gave
the
us
two
a
under that.
definition of a mass gathering right here.
Right, but that's from the
Yeah.
state.
And even that,
He doesn't-
well, then there you
that's-
go. That's,
All right.
even for that, like he said, he doesn't have 2,000 people, so I'm a little curious as to if he was just rolled into that years ago and because somebody decided he needed to have that permit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the existing ordinance for itinerant vendors, which also covers mass gathering permits. I think there's some ambiguity in the existing ordinance, because there's fees for 6 months and 12 months, which I believe would cover individual vendors.
Mhm.
And then there's fees for mass gathering permits for 1 week or 12 months. And I believe that the interpretation that's been applied is that for a multi-vendor facility, such as a flea market, that falls under the mass gathering fee. But I think it probably makes sense going forward for the council to consider a change that would clarify what fee would apply in the case of a flea market, because it's not crystal clear under the existing statute.
No, that, yeah.
If he isn't covered, then you'd end up in a situation where each vendor would have to be applying for their itinerant vendor
Yeah,
permit,
that
which
would
would
be
be
even
worse.
more of a nightmare, so we
Right.
need to come up with something. I think it's something we need to discuss. Maybe not at this time, a workshop perhaps, but we need to figure something out.
I think the question we have before us is whether we want to make a change to the fee schedule.
I would say no at this time until we iron out exactly where the flea market sits in this fee schedule,
Okay.
or if it sits in the fee schedule.
So last time we learned the council doesn't have the authority to issue a temporary permit, but the clerk does. And I believe they have been issued a temporary. When does that expire? Do you know, Twyla?
We just gave them a temporary and never really gave it an expiration. We knew you were taking it up on
Okay.
the council agenda, so if you'd like to create, we can issue another temporary. If you'd like to give it a date for expiration, you could. Or we could give you time to review it.
Go ahead, Diane.
I would just like to add something that we have already collected this fee from another flea market, so you might want to keep that into consideration as you're going through this process. We have had one that has paid the fee.
What would you like to do, Greg?
Well, I think we need to figure out where we're gonna go with this. To me, like I said, under the one, it separates the two, so obviously, well, like Dan said, there's ambiguity here as far as whether he falls under a mass gathering or not. And then the point was brought up, well, if he doesn't fall under a mass gathering, then do each one of the vendors that show up have to get a 1 day?
I completely agree with you. I agree we need to determine that.
Then it's gonna be just a nightmare for anybody going to the flea market.
You know, the only thing I plan on this tonight was, I appreciate Mr. Carville bringing his concern to the council, but I have a concern with changing the fee schedule regularly, because people do pay, and, you know, I think the fee schedule is something that needs to be set, and needs to be set for a time, you know, for a period of time, you know, a year, whatever the council chooses, and not change it, you know, often. But I completely agree that we need to determine where the flea market fits in, and it wouldn't be prudent for us to act if we don't know that information at this time. So we could schedule a workshop to.
Can we add it to our workshop?
Would add
on
it
the
to that
30th?
workshop that we have coming up.
Okay.
And then maybe extend his permit until we come up with this?
Okay.
So we could do that, an extension to the end of July.
I think that will be sufficient. And Diane, you're all set with adding that to the June 30th special meeting? And we don't have a motion on this, so we are all set to move forward. All right, council all set with that?
Thank you.
All right. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-147, a renewal itinerant mass gathering permit for this is for James and Paulette Carville doing business as the Riverside Flea Market.
So we need to
Just
table that.
Okay, just move that to the next.
Move that to the.
Future meeting.
Into June.
Yeah.
I mean July. Yep.
Order 2015-148, the renewal itinerant mass gathering permit for Positive Change Lisbon.
I think that also is gonna have to
Right.
wait, because we didn't make a change to this.
Right.
And they will fall under the town for Moxie Days, so I think that needs to move to July as well.
Temporary as well, okay.
That might be a mass gathering there.
Yeah. That brings us to the next item, please.
Order 2015-149, the detective position.
As you know, we have a vacancy Bernie, who's in the audience tonight, is going to be moving on. And before I start the process of filling the position, I wanted to make sure that I got guidance from council that that's what you wanted me to do at this time.
Council have any directive to give to the manager regarding this?
Not much about it.
I would say hold off till we get the results of that study.
Yeah. I'll go along with that.
I think that's a good decision.
We'll be
Have you heard
getting that
anything on
by
that?
the end of the month.
That's what I'm hoping for,
Yep.
so.
Have we heard back from that
Yep.
study yet?
Yeah, he said we'll have it by the end of the month.
The end of
Okay.
this,
Yeah, end of this month, yeah.
Hopefully not July.
You know,
No,
need to
end of
start a
this
hiring
month.
process for something that, or vice versa.
I think that's the best bet. Diane, would you like a vote on that?
Yes, please.
Is anyone on the council willing to offer a motion?
I'll make the motion that we hold off on filling the position till after we get the review back.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
And before we move on, I just want to thank Detective McAllister for all his hard work in Lisbon, keeping us safe, and you've done a lot here with not only in the PD but in the schools, and I really appreciate your hard work.
Just want to publicly thank everyone. I am moving on. I do have a new job at the district attorney's office, so I certainly will be staying in the field of law enforcement. I just want to thank the town for all their support for the years. Certainly selectmen. Certainly it's been a very, very rewarding career for me here. I love the town of Lisbon, although I don't live here, as many of you know. At one point in time, I was actually a Citizen of the Year, and they had to get a special dispensation because I actually didn't live in the town to be a Citizen of the Year. So it has been an honor and a privilege to serve this town. There's a lot of dedicated police officers on that other side over there, both ladies and gentlemen, and it's been a privilege and an honor to serve with those folks. This is very bittersweet for me. This is a very emotional day for me. This is the end of a 38-year career. And I just want to thank everyone. Thank the school department, thank the council, and more importantly, thank the citizens who have supported me and my family in good times and bad. And there have been some very bad times and some very emotional times. But I want to thank you. And I appreciate having the opportunity to say a few words this evening.
Thank you very much. It's definitely, I told the manager last week, when we found out about the Detective McAllister leaving the force, I said, even if we fill the position, no matter who goes in that spot, you will not fill that shoe. He does a lot, and he's well known in the community. So it's definitely going to be a big loss to the community. Next item, please.
Order 2015-151, the policy and procedures for the fiscal administration of school accounts payable and payroll.
I think we're actually going to 150 first.
Turnover
Treasurer's
audit.
turnover warrant.
Oh, yes.
Audit.
Order 2015-150, the treasurer's turnover audit.
Would you like me to have Mr. Cross address it first?
Yep.
Good evening, Chairman Pesky, distinguished members of the Town Council of Lisbon. My name is Ed Karras. I'm the Finance Director. Excuse me. I'm requesting that we amend the scope of the current auditor's duties from the financial statement audit to what's called the treasurer's turnover audit. It's been several years, or I should say over several years, we've had turnover. We've had Mr. Eldridge as manager, had Mr. Olmsted. We've had Jessica Malloy filling in. Eventually, Manager Barnes came on. Jessica Malloy left. Rather than just rely on the typical financial statement audit, it is customary that when a treasurer leaves, and in this case, treasurer really means finance director, tax collector, or any of these positions, okay, that we go in and you do a focused audit on the high-risk accounts, like cash accounts, your investments, your tax collections, your sewer accounts, wherever there is something that has been under the control of the treasurer, tax collector. Here in Lisbon, as you know, although we have a staff in the finance office along with the supervision of the town manager, there are a lot of critical duties that are concentrated in very few hands. And so we have an opportunity here to really go in, take an expanded look at all of these accounts, make sure they're in reconciliation, make sure that we get off to a fresh start. We are at a point where I am new, Ms. Barnes is new, you folks are, a council that has been recently elected. None of us have any past history here, so I think this is the time to really dig in, look at all of these accounts, and move on to a fresh start. And I think certainly for the public, it makes everything transparent. There are no stones left unturned, and I think along with the financial statement audit, this would be a worthwhile endeavor.
Any comments or questions from council on this?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's really good for the public to be able to see that, get all our accounts in order.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second?
And although your recommendation here is not to exceed $10,000, obviously, spending $10,000 in addition, some people might question. But I think even if it does cost $10,000, it is one of the most best spent $10,000 in the town of Lisbon to ensure we have that fresh start going forward, and for that, for the protection of you and for protection of the manager and the council, to make sure everything is crossed and dotted. And who knows what we might find, and then we'll, and then anything that we have issues on, we can correct at that time. So I think it's a great idea, and anything else that you feel you need, please ensure you come back to the council for that support or whatever you want.
Additional stack of 20s would help.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All those in favor of the motion?
Order passed, 7-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-151, the policy and procedures for the fiscal administration of school accounts payable and payroll.
Be yet again, and we passed out a revised copy. It should be in front of you.
Yep.
Thank you. As I think I've met with all of you at one time or another, I have been really adamant about the need to bring our internal controls over accounting and finance here in Lisbon up to what I would call a more adequate standard. Okay? We've been very fortunate in that we have competent people, both on the town side and down the street in the school. However, we have unfortunately strayed away from the town ordinances and Title 30, which is the duty of town treasurer. So in an effort to bring us back into substantial compliance on an interim basis, while I work with folks here in town to develop a comprehensive set of internal control policies and procedures, which I would hope we could adopt into ordinance at one time rather than piecemeal things in, so we don't lose the context of what we're trying to accomplish. I have come up with a policy and procedure, have had discussions with Superintendent Green and Kathy Mesmer and Manager Barnes today. We were able to tune up the language to make it workable for not only the treasurer, but also for the school and the superintendent and for Kathy. So basically, the policy statement brings us back into compliance. I have a heading that's called Implementation Timeline Required, and although we would make it effective at this meeting, our implementation schedule would be so that on July 1st, we would be ready to go. And that gives us a chance to get the technology in place, the human resources we need in place, and to attempt to iron out any of the bugs that might crop up rather than just trying to throw over the switch. And so as we do that, I am asking on behalf of the superintendent and the business manager, as we had discussed today, that we could, in the interim, amend the procedure so that we would have at least one member of the school board who's designated by the chair be the signer for the majority in the interim, okay? And that we have our designee from the town council. You folks are in and out of the office here most every day, or more of you, actually sign off here at the office. That would give the treasurer and myself, the school superintendent, and the business manager the flexibility to keep this process moving, okay, while getting all of the required signatures. And I think that we're all in agreement that the plan going forward will work very nicely for the school accounts payable. Also, as part of this, we are bringing back the requirement is there, to which we are now bringing ourselves back to, and that is that the manager's or the treasurer's signature be applied to the checks here in the town office, okay, as required by ordinance. For the payroll, my discussion today with Superintendent Green and Business Manager Kathy Mesber is such that, and I agree, payroll is not always so clear-cut because there are times when we'll have special pays, so we really can't say hard and fast that we will be able to meet a 48-hour lead time, but we want the flexibility to put in alternate procedures that we agree upon in those times where we have special pays for whatever purpose, okay? When the school has to make a stipend payment, or we end up having to implement pay raise for contract, that may narrow our time frame down. And so what I have said is that we'll come up with procedures on a case-by-case basis that allows us to remain in compliance with Title 26 of the Maine statutes, which govern the payment of wages on a 16-day cycle. I have enclosed some notes bearing on this as far as some flexibility we need. I'm citing all of the references that I consulted as far as enabling statutes and ordinances. And I think if I could just call upon either Superintendent Green or Kathy to step up. I do want you to know that we come at this on a collaborative basis, and hopefully we can move this forward.
As Ed said, that we did meet this afternoon to discuss how to better follow the ordinances and the state law and stuff, so that, and we're working together to try to get this done. The ordinances are, as I said in our meeting, a little archaic. I mean, most of the stuff we do for payroll is direct deposit and ACH and stuff, and the ordinances tend to talk more about checks. But we did sit down and discuss. There are legal issues with the treasurer signing the checks. So the checks are going to be printed here, like they did several years ago. The reason why we pulled them out of the office and into the school department office is because it is more efficient to have us print the checks there instead of having to come back and forth. And it is going to increase the workload for a person here in the town office. So that is a detraction from what we're doing, but what we agreed on will follow what the ordinances and the policy states at this time, or what we're working towards. So that's what we came up with with this policy that Ed is recommending.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from council? I open the floor for a motion for approval.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Once again, I just want to thank the manager, Ed, Mr. Green, Kathy, for working on this to tighten our internal controls, bring the reins back a little bit, and I encourage staff to continue to look at internal controls, and I'll be interested to see when you have your full internal control policy put together. I think changes are really important, and they're well, so thank you very much for bringing this forward. All those in favor of the motion?
Order passed, 7-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-152 to request to solicit bids for Pierce apparatus.
Chief Gallipo. Good evening.
As you have the letter in front of you, this is to start, to open up the process to receive bids for the refurbishment of Engine 1 and Truck 6, which are now at their half-life, and that was part of the approved program in 2004 that we would try to do a full fire department refurbishment of apparatus so that we can get our full lifespan of typically, hopefully 25 to 30 years out of a piece of apparatus, and part of that is actually going through this refurb. So it's basically just opening up the solicitation to get those requests for proposals.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
How many vendors do you typically get to respond to the RFP?
We're going to put out as many, we have 4 or 5 different vendors that can actually do that process here. We're going to put them out to every one of them.
Perfect.
Here in town. I mean, not in town, I mean.
Yep.
In the state.
Perfect. Thanks for bringing it forward. All those in favor of the motion?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-152A, Treasurer's Disbursement Warrants, Council Designation.
This is an item that, Diane, do you want to address anything
Yeah,
first?
I can do it.
Okay.
This is, if you go to page 103 of your packet, talks about the town disbursement of warrants under the current ordinance. And what this allows you to do is to designate one or more counselors to sign the payroll warrant. If you don't designate somebody, as per policy here, then the majority of the counselors would have to sign off on the payroll warrant before it can be dispersed. So what that means is we don't wait until the council meeting to sign. Somebody would actually have to come into the office before checks are released on Thursdays. That's the way it should be done. It's not being done that way, but we need to do it to follow state law and follow our ordinance. So my recommendation would be to recommend probably 2 people, just in case one's not available, the other one might be. Right now, our payrolls are running on the off council meeting nights. If it was this week, we wouldn't have a problem because we could get the signature at the meeting tonight, but they're on the off week, so we really need to have somebody come in and sign those.
I got to designate those people.
Yeah, the chairman designates according to the ordinance.
Anybody who would like to do it? You? Okay. I'll designate Councilor Bickford as primary designee for the payroll, and I'll designate Councilor Garrison as secondary in case Councilor Bickford isn't available to respond to sign off. I think, yeah, actually I'll save that, never mind. And the next item, please.
Is under other business, town manager's report.
Nothing to report.
All right. And we are, next item, please.
We've done the Atlantic Salmon Federation, so it will be the audience participation and response for new items.
Sir, I forgot your name, but this is your time.
Okay. So as you know, Bernie's retired, or retiring, I should say. So you guys your force has gotten shorter. There's a huge drug problem. I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but I mean, it's just flowing through the town. I call Bill Tapley on a daily basis, send him pictures, text messages. I mean, I can sit in my driveway and just watch the cars go by. I can sit by the old Grazianos and watch the cars go by. There's numerous places. They're coming off the highways. They're flowing into this town. You know, you need to, you know, I know Tapley says he's doing most of it on his own time. I don't know what you guys can do or what you need to do, but something needs to happen. I mean, I moved here in '04, and it wasn't really that bad, but it's gotten worse. There's a lot of heroin, there's a lot of, you know, it's not so much, you know, I mean, there's a lot of marijuana, but there's a lot of hard drugs. So I just would like to say my piece, and, you know, hopefully you guys can, you know, do something about it, crack down on it. I don't know what to do, or I just like to say that, so.
Thank you. Are you seeing any, when you make those phone calls, I'm assuming you get a response?
Oh, yeah.
And are you seeing the traffic slow down a little bit?
Slow down? No. I mean, it's just, I mean, it stops for a while. I mean, but then it just, you know what I mean? It moves to a different location. Then it comes back. It's, you know, if it's not on one street, it's on the next. I mean, it's pretty much the same people, just moving to a different location or different area.
Okay.
So,
Appreciate you sharing your concern with us. Anybody else? Chief Brooks? Are you coming to address the council as the chief or as a resident?
Both.
All right.
Primarily as the chief.
Okay.
I do want to respond to this gentleman's concern. It doesn't take much. You watch the news. It's statewide. Heroin is become a real problem, and it is working its way up from the south, and it's coming right up the pike, and we're in the path. And what he's saying to you is happening, and we are doing the best we can to address that. Just last week, after during the time of a stakeout, saw an event take place. The vehicle was stopped. Our canine hit on the vehicle, and under Maine evidence rules, canine, certified drug canine is sufficient probable cause in order to obtain a search warrant, which our detective did, and that vehicle did have drug paraphernalia, and also a semi-automatic weapon with a fully loaded clip. The subject was a convicted felon, so you can imagine the degree of charges that this particular individual faced. Again, there are drug issues in town. We are addressing them as best we can. This gentleman mentioned Bill Tapley's name, and as the council is fully aware, I believe you are anyway, that Bill Tapley is also our resident MDEA agent. So we do get the resources of MDEA when it's available. So, and for those of you who attended the governor's piece tonight, you know the governor is saying the same thing. There's a problem, and he's trying to get it addressed by getting more MDEA agents, and he's getting stuffed in Augusta right now. That plan's not happening. So it's all coming back to a local issue. We have to fight it as best we can, and we will continue to do the best job that we can.
Thank you.
I got a question for Chief.
All right.
What would you say is the gateway drugs to these drugs that we're dealing with now?
The gateway?
It's all right, you don't have to answer that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I forgot what
Over the history, we are very fortunate in Lisbon because of our proximity to a couple of cities and also our proximity to the coast. We have been very fortunate that we have not had more serious problems than, you know, in the past. It's going through town, and it's stopping in town. But the folks on either side of us really have problems, and we've been very fortunate here. But again, I think if it was just on the news 2 nights ago or last night, I don't remember now, but down in York County, they addressed it. It's coming up, and it's getting worse, and we have to do the best we can to fight it.
I wanted to say something about what the governor said about the DEA agents. they wouldn't hire DEA agents, but they hired custodians instead.
Yeah, priorities.
Yeah, priorities.
Yeah, keep the hallway clean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody else wish to address the council? Mr. LaRochelle?
Brian LaRochelle, Lisbon Falls, and I didn't have a chance earlier, but, I mean, Bernie leaving, I mean, that's drastic for this town. I mean, Bernie's actually been around a long time, and Mr. McAllister is a detective. I mean, it's just, he's one of these guys that you always could call and know that someone professional is going to show up, and Tapley's the same way. It's really discouraging a little bit to me as a business owner in town to actually think that we may hold off in hiring another detective, only because of the need. It's nice if you actually are a business owner and you actually have something come through that's actually questionable at that moment. It's nice to be able to make a phone call, whether it's someone with a bad check or a money issue, or just there's so many different scams out there today that it's always nice to have someone you can call that actually has expertise in it. I kind of keep hearing a little bit that we're waiting for this police survey, which is kind of interesting as a taxpayer. I know we paid to do it. I just hope that this survey comes through and shows that we need extra staff and extra detectives, that you can act on it and not only use this survey as a means to cut the police force. Because, I think Bernie worked night and day here. Bernie, you could see him here anytime. And I think to put all the load of what this town has on one detective, I think is a way of actually maybe making us have no detectives at some point in time, because it's definitely there's no discussion whether there's a workload. The discussion is whether or not as a town that we feel that the need to have one. I think that if you speak to most people, especially business owners, I don't think there's a question whether we need multiple detectives. So just my piece. But again, thank you for Bernie, because he's actually served us town really well. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Cassie Colby, 32 Moody Road. Just wanted it to be known that a special town meeting petitioners committee has been formed. An affidavit with the budget articles being questioned has been filed with the town clerk on Wednesday, May 27th, and a petition with 718 signatures that was collected Sunday and Monday of registered Lisbon residents was filed this morning, June 2nd, calling for a special town meeting so that the voters can vote to approve or reject the school committee's budget as they proposed to the town council on May 12th, and the outcome of that meeting be the budget that be on the referendum ballot.
Thank you. Anybody else who's going to address the council? All right, seeing none. I did see the petition committee out over the weekend. I actually ran into one of the gentlemen. He was sitting over here. I don't know where he went. I got many phone calls regarding that petition. Oh, there you are right there. And different questions on it. And the council, will be following the charter. The town clerk has her procedure. Then it will come to the town council to deem the sufficiency of the petition. And I'm sure everybody will be up to date on when that meeting will be, and we'll make sure we follow the charter to make sure we have it within a timely fashion. And the next item, please.
There are no appointments. Council communications.
Open the floor for any councilor communications.
Yeah, I would like to commend our chairman, Councilor Pesky, for the good job that he's been doing. Our last town meeting that we had at LCS, and I felt he conducted himself very professional amongst a lot of, I felt, insults and the way he was treated, and not to retaliate, and I thought he conducted himself very well at that meeting. And I know people, I just want to make one comment. There was one person, I don't remember who it was, made a comment and said, "Don't send a boy to do a man's job," which I thought was a big insult. And then we had a bunch of people, I think he got a standing ovation. I'm not sure, but maybe got a standing ovation for that. And I just want to ask the people out there, what kind of message are you sending to these kids by doing this and trying to bully somebody that's an elected official? I just thought it was the wrong thing. I thought the conduct was bad. I think Councilor Pesky is a far bigger man to take that kind of abuse and not retaliate. And I just wanted to put that out there. I want to commend him for the job he's doing.
Thank you, Councilor Mativier. Any other councilor communications? I have one that was just passed down to me. As I'm sure all of you guys have read in your email, the staff has been keeping us up to date on the county charter fight that's going on. Our surrounding communities are wondering, our surrounding community managers are asking their selectmen and councils if they want to join the fight to seek legal if need be, and if we want to join this issue with trying to press the Budget Advisory Board's authority. I don't know if the council has a position we want to take on this to direct the staff to respond to these requests, or if the council wants to hold off, or what anyone wants to do. If we do want to, I think it's important that we make that known soon, and the staff communicates with the organizations sooner than later.
I think we should definitely support the actions of Lewiston. I think that they're preparing a lawsuit there against the county for their actions which just baffle me that the county thinks that they can approve a charter on their own without coming back to us, the voters, who voted for the original charter. They can change it somehow by their own legislative action. I don't understand that at all. And I think that needs to be resolved by a court and not by the county commissioners themselves.
I believe, I might have misread it, but I believe they proposed and approved
They proposed a new
changes.
amendment now, but they're operating on a version of the charter that
Correct.
was not the one that was
Yep.
approved by us, the citizens, and I don't see how that's at all legitimate.
I completely agree with you.
Now they're trying to make a patchwork after the fact to disguise from voters, and their amendment still leaves the budget board as basically an advisory board, and we know in this town how that worked as an advisory board when it had no power. It was very hard to get people to actually do anything on it. And I think since it's the towns and the cities that have to collect the money for the county, we're the ones that get blamed by the voters for it, so we need to have an actual vote on that on that budget there. Otherwise, they're going to just charge whatever they want, and we get beat up for it.
Anyone else have any position on this? I think this. Oh, go ahead, Roger.
I'm with you and Mark.
All right.
I think something's gonna be done.
This is a touchy subject. It's going to be touchy going forward. I think what I would like to do as chair, if there's no objection, I'd like, if Mark, you're willing to do, appoint you as the liaison between the council and these folks, along with the manager. I think there's going to be several meetings coming up, and they've already talked about scheduling a meeting with surrounding communities for selectmen and councilors to get together. And I think it'd be good if we have somebody is designated to go to these to report back to the council. Are you willing to do something?
Yes,
Okay.
I would. Yep.
Okay.
And if Diane would also be involved, I'd like to have her professional experience involved.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I know one of the gentlemen that emailed to that had brought up the concern that legal action means
Money.
taxpayers pay on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We paid to bring the action, and they use taxpayer money, so it's nobody wins.
Nope.
So hopefully they can come up with something short of taking it to court.
Just so the public knows, so far, the estimate for legal action is $5,000 to $10,000. That's the latest update that we have received. So as chair, I'd like to appoint Councilor Lunt and Diane Barnes to be liaison between the Lisbon Town Council and whatever type of committee is formed to deal with the county charter. Any other council communications? All right. Next item, please.
Under executive session, order 2015-153 and 154 to go into executive session per 1 MRSA, section 4056E, consultations with legal counsel, and 1 MRSA 4056A, personnel matter, town manager's contract.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'd like to make a note before we go into executive session. We are expecting a vote to follow. If you do not want to hang around, we can record it, but we will be having a vote to follow most likely. All those in favor of the motion?
Order passed, 7-0.
We should have it in here.
Will
'cause-
this be in here or
Yeah.
in the?
Yeah, we'll
other
keep
room?
it in here. Yep.
All right, so let me turn the recorders off, please.
No, I'll go into my office and get it, because I thought I flipped it to this. and then-
Got it in, sort of got it in my head.
They're gonna legalize.
If I can get a few hours of sleep tonight.
Sleep's overrated.
All right, I'll bring the Lisbon Town Council scheduled meeting for June 2nd, 2015 back to order. Came out of executive session at 10:19 with Councilor Bickford and Councilor Garrison making the motion. It was a 7-0 vote. And we do have 2 votes following the executive session. I'd open the floor for the first motion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
And the motion is as follows. Lisbon Town Council directs the town manager and administration to consult with the town's independent bond counsel on any bond-related issues. We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Order passed, 7-0.
And we're going to have another vote to schedule a special town council meeting for Tuesday, June 9th, 2015, at 7 p.m. here in the town office for an executive session only. And is there a motion?
Make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
And next item, please.
Is to adjourn.
Open the floor for a motion.
Make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you. It's all right here. I put it here because I received it.
Did everybody else, though?
I believe so, yep.
Also, it wasn't so late, I can make you down at Dunkin' Donuts for coffee, get another gift card.
3.5